بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على سيد الرسل وخاتم الأنبياء وعلى آله الأزكياء وأصحابه الأتقياء أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقترب للناس حسابهم وهم في غفلة معرضون ما يأتيهم من ذكر من ربهم محدث إلا استمعوه وهم يلعبون لاهية قلوبهم وأسروا النجوى الذين ظلموا هل هذا إلا بشر مثلكم أفتأتون السحر وأنتم تبصرون صدق الله العظيم. Shaitan took an oath in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he would do his best to detract human beings from connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from being true servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the one purpose he serves and the only thought that must be on Shaitan's mind is how do I get this creation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created to be loyal to him, to turn away from him. Now there are many approaches Shaitan uses when directing his attention to each individual human being. The greatest goal for Shaitan would be, and this is the first thing that he focuses on, is to cause deviation in the belief of the individual. How can I create confusion? How can I create doubt in their heart? And this is very tricky. Because if Shaitan is successful in this, then he has attained his ultimate goal. The human being will be deprived of the great mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-Jannah al-A'la, inshaAllah. May Allah bless us all with it. Amen. We look at the people that came before us. Our grandparents, our great-grandparents, many of us may have experienced this for a period during our own lives. Yes, there were people who may not have been as connected as we are, and maybe they didn't check the news every hour like we do. It's possible for them, reading the news was a matter of a paper being printed a day, or maybe a paper being printed a week that was shared within a few people, and people would pass that paper around saying, these are the new happenings of the community. It's possible that many of those people weren't as connected and as in tune as we are. That comes with pros and cons. One of the cons, obviously, is that you could be oblivious of the happenings of the world. And that's one of the blessings of having a lot of information, being so connected that you're aware of what's going on in the world. You're aware of oppression that's happening in corners of the world. You find out instantly. You don't have to wait for someone to come from that land to come and tell you, oh, in Yemen this is happening, in Somalia this is happening, in Palestine this is happening, in Syria this is happening, in Bangladesh this is happening. You find out in real time. One of the downsides is that you get involved in overly consuming information. And when you consume a lot of information, first thing, you end up losing value for the information you consume. Secondly, your filter for what you consume goes down as well. So when I look at my grandfather or my great-grandfather, rahimahumullah, it's very possible that in their entire life, from the moment they were born till the moment they died, they never heard a single sermon from a Christian pastor or a Jewish rabbi. No one ever presented atheism to them. No one ever presented Buddhism to them. From the moment they were born till the moment they died, when it came to religion, they only heard one word, and that was the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They only heard La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. That was the only speech or article or book they read. It was a book that connected them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all in all, when it came to protect and preserve their iman, every person's task is different, and I have no doubt, and I wish not at all to minimize any person's challenge, but the challenges were minimal in comparison to today. Because in a world that we're so connected, we are being bombarded day and night with an alternative agenda. And Shaitan is using these mediums to create doubt in our heart, to bring that shak into the heart of the believer. And there are so many outlets that we're connected to, so many outlets that we are loyal to, that if one of these outlets delivers a convincing argument, it's very possible our iman can go in a few moments. It's not something that happens over years. This is something that can happen within moments. What's the most important thing to the average American? Our TV is important to us. Our movie stars, our musicians, these are people that are important to us. Our politicians are important to us. Our gaming community is important to us. Our sportsmen are important to us. And each of these people, now that they have access to us in our hearts on a real-time basis, these individuals or these outlets can pour whatever they want into our heart, and now we have a new problem to deal with. We now have a new dilemma to deal with. Internally, we're conflicted again because we're being fed so many narratives at one time. Now, being aware of so many narratives is not a bad thing, but you have to first be aware of your own narrative. You need to be aware of your own tradition before you decide to go out and venture and figure out what the rest of the world has to say. What is your narrative? You turn on the TV, and depending on which political leaning the channel has, whether they're conservative or liberals, that's the only agenda they push through their shows. You have a conservative TV show, they put out some TV drama, and they're promoting this idea of illegal immigrants. They're promoting the idea of Muslims are terrorists. They're promoting whatever agenda it is that their political view, their political view is. They're pushing that through their TV show. You go to a TV broadcasting station that is more liberal leaning, and through their shows they're pushing their idea. God doesn't exist. Sexuality is very fluid, and on as we know. And we interact on a daily basis, people are pushing these thoughts into our mind. I remember when I was in madrasa, I asked one of my shuyukh this question that, what's the Islamic ruling on watching TV? Now, for some of you, this may sound like a very absurd question, but in the 90s, it was a very common question. Everyone was asking this. What's the Islamic ruling on watching TV? So I asked my teacher this question. I said, Sheikh, what's the ruling on watching TV? And he said to me that I'm not so concerned about all the other things that other fuqaha and jurists are talking about, the music, the picture, the video, and all this stuff. My concern, he said, is why would someone give open access to their heart and brain to an individual on the other side of the world, maybe, who is just sitting there pushing their agenda into your mind? You look at these TV shows, and that's all that's being pushed. God doesn't exist. Jokes being made on God, on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jokes being made on the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very sly remarks being thrown in, and in a very shady approach. And this leaves a massive hole in the foundation of our youth. It leaves a big hole in the foundation of our community. That's why it's very important that we are considerate. We're thoughtful. What are we being influenced by? We live in a time where everyone is looking for our influence. Facebook is selling our information. Google is selling our information. There is no such thing as a free service in the world. If you aren't paying for the product, you are the product. You are being sold. Your information is being sold. Everyone wants you, because we live in a democratic world and you matter. We live in a consumerist society, you matter. Everyone wants you. Now the question is, are you willing to give yourself to everyone, distribute yourself into a trillion pieces and everyone can have a piece of me, or are you going to be considerate and thoughtful? We know this very well. If our kids go to school and they start hanging out with the wrong crowd, or if someone tells us that, I saw your son hanging out with this person, you would immediately throw a fit. That why were you hanging out with that person? Don't you know that person uses the X, Y, and Z word? Don't you know that they use profanity in their speech and they use foul language? Immediately we throw a fit. Or if we saw someone consuming alcohol, someone in college, we would tell our child, don't hang out with that person. If we saw someone involved with drugs, we would say, don't hang out with that person. Because we know these are bad influences. But when it comes to the influence that impacts us the most, we've let our guard down. And anyone comes in now and is stealing the iman and stealing the morality of our community. This is why you'll see that many young folks from our community, men and women, when they go to their colleges and universities, and if they end up in a philosophy class, their iman is really at risk. I can't tell you how many young folks I've sat with in my life who've taken a philosophy class, a semester here or two there, and now they're completely conflicted and they're not even sure of everything they believed in their life because someone fed something into their mind. Now, if they had a strong foundation, then no matter whatever anyone puts on them, they'll be able to stand strong. Because they know their perspective, they know what they believe in. And this is the case of many of the elders in our community, alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah. They've grown up being taught wahdaniyah, the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They've grown up being very familiar with the concept of risala, being very familiar with the concept of nubuwah. They're very familiar and very comfortable with ittiba' and ita'a, obedience, imitating other people, copying other people. They're okay with that. They're not interested in being willing to, reinvent the wheel at every crossroad in life. So now when you tell them that, X, Y, and Z objection could be made against religion, because they're already confident in their principles, they have no problem at all, or the problem is minimal, it isn't as difficult for them to deal with. When we have such a big difficulty in our community, such a big challenge ahead of us, the responsibility we carry to address this challenge is as great. We have to be very particular. We have to be on our game. And the sad part is, this is where we drop the ball. How many parents in the community even care about bringing their kids to the masjid? How many people in our community, let's put the kids aside, how many adults in our community are even interested in being connected to the masjid, attending the Jumu'ah Khutbah on time, attending the halaqat and the khawatir that are happening in the community, so you can be educated about your deen? Everyone wants their children to be religious and wants them to be good Muslims, but there's an effort that has to go into it. If you invest in your children, you invest in your family, you invest in your spouse, you invest in yourself. Tomorrow there's something to stand for. But if you are neglecting yourself, you're neglecting the people around you, then when this storm hits you, and if that storm makes its way to your home, be ready to be demolished. Be ready to be flattened right out. We have to take initiative. We need to understand that failing this could be failing our generation, possibly our progeny, and may Allah protect, may Allah protect, may Allah protect. May Allah protect that the day come that our own children are no longer familiar with La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. May Allah protect us. But this is a reality. We can't act as if it doesn't exist. We must invest in our children. We must sit with them, make them familiar with Islam. It's not that we don't have the ability, the energy, or the time, because trust me, we do. I'm telling you, the father that says that I can't take my child to the masjid because the masjid is 15 minutes away from my home. The mother that says that I can't take my child to the Quran class in the evening because there's traffic on the way there will have no problem at all taking their child to a Kuman class. They'll have no problem at all taking them for a soccer practice or taking them to tennis practice because they see value in that. That parent that says that I don't know how to teach my child to read the Quran, what should I do? How do I get my children to read the Quran? They have found ways to get their children on par and become fluent in reading English. No child is born reading English. No child is born reading Urdu, Persian, or Arabic. These are skills that have to be acquired by people. You have to put time and effort into it, and that's when you acquire it. Parents sit with their children every evening, 10 minutes a day, ensuring that they're getting their daily reading in. They're sitting with their children to make sure the science project is done and the math homework is done. And if they're struggling, they find a way to make sure that that void is filled in so that their child has the most pristine education. Because if they invest in their child's education, they sit in that 15-minute traffic every day to make sure their child makes it to the tutor. That means that child will now have a greater opportunity of getting into a greater university. If they get into a good university, that gives them a better opportunity at getting a good job. If they have a good job, this gives them a better opportunity at getting somewhere in life. People will have value for this person. But if my child doesn't get their tutoring done, their grades will suck, their opportunities at colleges will begin to slim out, which will then mean that their job opportunities could also slim, which could mean that the people in the world will have no value or respect for my child. This is the equation that Shaitan has set into our mind, that this is the focus that we need to have. We need to make sure that our children are successful in our worldly life, no matter what the casualty is along the way. No matter what the casualty is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could be a casualty, let it be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing can harm Allah azza wa jal, by the way. But in terms of this person's relationship with Allah, that could be a casualty, who cares? You could have a 16-year-old kid who can read 3 languages, who can converse briefly by 18 in 4 or 5 languages, a hi, hello, how are you doing? But you ask them to read the Quran and they're struggling. They understand traffic law, they don't know Islamic law. They understand what it means to be, what it means to be a citizen. They understand the Constitution, but you ask them their fard ayn and they're lost. This is clear neglect. It's neglect on behalf of the community at times on behalf of the family members, and sometimes it's outright neglect on behalf of the parents themselves. And we need to be very thoughtful of this. We have young men and women in our community that aren't sure how to pray Salah. I was once speaking at a youth camp, and I had led the Asr Salah. After Asr Salah, I turned around just doing my dhikr and tasbih, and there was a young man that got up. He was covering his eyes like this. He was crying, and he walked out. So I said to one of the brothers, go and follow him. I'll join up with you guys in a moment. So after I was done, I went outside, and I found them, and this young man was crying, and I said, what happened? He says to me that I'm 16 years old, and I have no idea how to pray Salah. You know, for all these years, I've just been copying the people around me. Whenever they go up, I go up. When they go down, I go down. No one ever taught me how to pray Salah. He then said to me, no one ever taught me how to do wudu. And I told him this is going to change now. You have a phone? He said, yes. Does the phone have a camera? He said, excellent camera. I said, pull it out. We're going to use it for good today. He used the camera. I did wudu in front of him. I prayed 2 rak'ah in front of him out loud. And I said, from now on, this is what you're going to do. You're going to watch this video until you figure out how to do wudu. You're going to watch this video until you figure out how to pray Salah. This person, this young man, by the way, he figured out his wudu and Salah in 24 hours. He had figured it out. He didn't need that video. He deleted the video. He came and told me. He said, Sheikh, video deleted. I said, why did you do that? He said, I figured it out already. And at that point, I realized that it wasn't the matter that this child lacked in potential. It wasn't that this child didn't have the ability. Rather, it was a matter of the attention and the education being delivered to this child. He didn't get that. He lost out for 16 years of his life. He didn't know how to properly do sajda in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the situation that we're in, unfortunately. Many parents don't care. Sunday school, you know, the kids will figure it out, and everyone has 10 remarks to make about the local Sunday school without any contribution of fixing the system or making it even better. Not that our system needs fixing or need to be better, but in a scenario where it does. People have remarks about the masjid, they have remarks about the Quran class, but no one is willing to invest into them. And if we invest in our institutions today, tomorrow our families will have a place to go to, a place for them to learn. When you tell your child at home to read the Quran, if you're one of those parents that encourages your kids, read the Quran 10 minutes a day. Your kids are already reading English 10 minutes a day. Why not give them a mushaf and say, read the Quran 10 minutes a day? They don't know how to read the Quran, teach them to read the Quran. You shouldn't need someone to teach your child to read the Arabic alphabet. That's something as a parent you should be doing. And if you're wondering, how am I going to teach my child to read the Arabic alphabet? I don't know the alphabet myself, or maybe my pronunciation isn't good enough, or maybe I'm not familiar or fluent in reading, then that's something you should take on as a task. If you know your child when they reach the age of 4, they will need to start reading the Arabic alphabet, or maybe when they reach 3, or they'll need to start reading the Quran by the time they get to 6 and 7, then you have months to prepare. And it's not difficult. It just requires a little attention. Maybe through the care and concern you have for your child, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless you with the new knowledge. He will bless you with new ilm. I once went to a bookstore, and there was this book sitting in front of me. I picked it up and I read the title. It was a book written by a great scholar from Pakistan, Mufti Hussain Kamani. I picked up the book and I read the title, and at that moment my heart started yearning, and I started making the dua to Allah. I said, Ya Allah, I hope one day my child writes a book with this title too. You know what the title was? Mere walid, mere sheikh. Walidi sheikhi. My father was my mentor. He's attributing the beginning of the journey of all the knowledge this man has delivered to the world. A person who's written multiple volumes of commentary on hadith, multiple volumes of commentary on tafsir, multiple volumes of commentary on fiqh, translated the Quran, alhamdulillah, someone who has contributed to the domain of Islamic finance like maybe no one else in his time. You know, this person was involved with developing the IOFI standards, which is what is used in Islamic finance through the world. This one man, he's saying that I was inspired and I was taught the foundations by my father, Shaykh al-Hadith, Mufti Hussain Kamani, rahmatullahi alayhi. This is what you call inspiration. When you're telling your child to read the Quran at home after doing their English reading, don't walk away. Because when you walk away while they're sitting at home in the corner reading the Quran, you've just told them how important the Quran is. You sat with them while they were reading their English, when you walk away while they're reading their Quran. You sat with them during the math project and the science project, but when it comes to the hadith and seerah project, you walk away. We've turned our education of Islam into a torture, into a punishment, into a chore and responsibility rather than something that we should enjoy. We need to be very careful when it comes to shaitan ripping iman out of our families, ripping iman out of our hearts. When shaitan fails at taking the iman out of someone, when he sees that there is a person whose iman is rock solid, the second thing that he does is that he attacks their sincerity. Let me attack this person's sincerity, because if they aren't sincere, then the deeds they do will hold no value in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When a person focuses on their iman and really develops that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and acquires true sincerity, where what they do in their life, whatever they do in their life, they're doing it because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants them to do it. When they reach that point, when they understand the idea of sincerity and iman, when iman and ikhlas come together, shaitan only has one thing left to do. And he does this very well. He does a really good job of this. And what is this? Distract people, make them waste their time. Because if a person has iman and ikhlas and they utilize their time right, they're going to be at the doorstep of Jannah. They've got their iman, they've got their ikhlas, distract them. Because if you distract them, they have the faculty to do good, but they won't do good. And in comes Netflix, in comes Hulu, in comes video games, in comes YouTube, in comes WhatsApp, Facebook, and the list of social media outlets that we are distracted by today, trust me, will only grow. It'll only increase. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses this in the Quran. The opening verses of Surah Al-Anbiya, which I recited at the beginning of the khutbah, اقترب للناس حسابهم وهم في غفلة معرضون. The time of their accounting has come, and yet people are turning away. They're heedless. They aren't thinking. Very soon, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to demand a meeting with you, and you will have no choice to reject it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will call you forward by name. Ya Khalid, Ya Amr, Ya Bakr, come forward. And you will stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لَيْسَ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ اللَّهِ تُرْجُمَانٌ لَيْسَ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ اللَّهِ حِجَابٌ. It's just you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to speak with you. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam already told us what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask in this discussion, this interview. He will say, عَنْ عُمْرِهِ فِيمَا أَفْنَاهُ وَعَنْ شَبَابِهِ فِيمَا أَبْلَاهُ. I sent you to the world, I gave you life. From the moment you came to this world to the moment you die, every moment only takes you closer to meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This meeting is definite. When you stand in front of Allah, the first thing Allah will say is, tell me about your life. What did you do with it? I gave you the blessing of life. I gave you iman. What did you do with it? Tell me. Well, what will we say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You're standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَوْ تَرَى إِذِ الْمُجْرِمُونَ نَاكِسُوا رُؤُوسِهِمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, only if you could see their faces on that day, نَاكِسُوا رُؤُوسِهِمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. Their heads will be lowered down in front of their Lord because they will be in shame. عَنْ أُمْرِهِ فِيمَا أَفْنَاهُ. Tell me, what did you do with your life? You had everything. The opportunity for da'wah was for you. There was a community around you begging for guidance. You were sent to that land to guide them. You wanted knowledge, we gave it to you. You wanted wealth, we gave it to you. You would say that I didn't have health, that's why I couldn't do da'wah. I gave you health as well. You would say that I didn't have family to support me. I gave you family as well. You would say you didn't have ilm. I give you ilm as well. I give you knowledge as well. I give you everything. Now tell me, عَنْ عُمْرِهِ فِيمَا أَفْنَاهُ. What did you do with your life? وَعَنْ شَبَابِهِ فِيمَا أَبْلَاهُ. What did you do with your youth? When a person becomes old, people become religious when they get closer to their grave. Tell me what you did when you were in your prime years. When everyone was partying and shopping and they were going to the mall and going to dinners and going to the movies and going on meaningless vacations. Not all vacations are meaningless, but some of it is just meaningless. What were you doing with your life? What were you accomplishing? وَعَنْ شَبَابِهِ فِيمَا أَبْلَاهُ وَعَنْ مَالِهِ مِنْ أَيْنَ اكْتَسَبَهُ وَفِيمَا أَنْفَقَهُ. Tell me about your wealth. Where did you earn it from? I want to know about every penny you earned. Where did it come from? وَفِيمَا أَنْفَقَهُ. Where did you spend it? That money that I gave you, it was my gift to you. How did you utilize that wealth? This is a meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is sure. Be aware of your distractions. You have to come to terms with accepting that there are distractions in your life. Everyone has a different distraction here. A 16-year-old's distraction is different from the one who's 56 years old. The 6-year-old's distraction is different from the one who's 16 years old. You can't look at a 16-year-old kid and say he plays video games all the time while you're distracted by whatever it is that distracts you. You're watching Turkish dramas all day. It doesn't make sense. That child looks at his father and says, Dad, you taught me how to be distracted. You taught me how not to be productive. I learned it from you. I didn't know what a TV was until you showed me the remote. We are accountable with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of being a good role model, utilizing our time. Our life is very limited. By Allah, it'll slide right past us. This last Sunday, less than a week ago, I was teaching at the seminary. I was in the middle of a class. Ironically, subhanAllah, I was teaching Kitab al-Janais. We just finished the chapter of Dafn al-Mayyit. We just finished that chapter. I read the last hadith in the bab. Someone knocked on the door. They came inside. They said, there's an important phone call for you. I left the classroom. I went outside and I received news that my 22-year-old cousin passed away. 22 years old. No health history at all. Very healthy young man. I said, what happened? I said, he woke up in the morning lying down next to his wife. He was gasping for air. His father, who was 24 hours ago in Pakistan, he just landed in Dallas the night before. He took his father out for dinner. They played football together. They went to sleep in the morning. He was gasping for air. The father came, held his son in his hands, and his son died right in his hands. The father, I was with him all week. I just came from there. And he said to me, the father said to me, this was in Dallas. So the father said to me that my son died in my hands. My grandson, because my cousin had a son, my grandson slept next to me that night, and in the morning I was holding his father. And his father had now passed away. My son had passed away. I was involved in this young man's janazah, in his ghusl, in his takfeen, and right before they took his body to the graveyard, by Allah, I was standing in the corner of the room when his mother came to greet him for the last time. Ya Allah. May Allah never let you see this day. She came and she leaned forward and she kissed her son on the forehead and she just cried. All I could see was a waterfall falling off his cheeks. And she just kept saying to her son, my son, I love you. That's all she kept saying. I love you, I love you. She kept saying that again and again. And then finally she said to her son, that just wait for me at Jannah, my du'as will get you there. She said, wait for me at the gates of Jannah, my du'as will get you there. I was standing in the corner just in tears, crying. Everyone in the room was crying because this mother had lost her son. And I realized that day because when we went for the janazah, after we buried this young man, while the burial was occurring here, my eyes were locked on his 1-year-old son. I was looking at the son and I was thinking, Ya Allah, look at the test this child has before he even got a chance to know his father left the dunya. Every one of us, like I said, will leave. You just don't know who's going to be standing at whose janazah. You may be at your father's janazah, your father will be at your janazah. One of the two is going to happen. But ultimately, when you leave the world, beyond the janazah, beyond all of the tears and sobbing, there is a day and a meeting that you and I need to be concerned about where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will call you forward and ask you, عَنْ عُمْرِهِ فِيمَا أَفْنَاهُ. What did you do with your life? اقْتَرَبَ لِلنَّاسِ حِسَابُهُمْ وَهُمْ فِي غَفْلَةٍ مُعْرِضُونَ. Allah Azza wa Jalla says in the second verse of Surah Al-Anbiya, مَا يَأْتِيهِمْ مِنْ ذِكْرٍ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ مُحْدَثٍ إِلَّا اسْتَمَعُوهُ وَهُمْ يَلْعَبُونَ. On that day in the world, every time someone delivered my message to you, you were too busy playing. لَاهِيَةً قُلُوبُهُمْ. Distracted hearts. You never thought for a moment that let me dedicate my life to meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Two things I want to propose as I finish off my khutbah. Number one, no matter how busy you are in life, no matter whatever is going on in your life, make sure you are connected to the masjid. This is the place where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy is descending. No matter where you live, what part of the world you're from, what community you're from, you must be connected to the masjid. And the second thing, find time every day, and this is not negotiable. Find time every day, even if it's a few minutes, to spend with the Quran. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks you on the Day of Judgment, what did you do in your life? And you say, in 80 years I read 200 lines of the Quran, what shame. There's no excuse for this. A person that says to me that I don't have time to read the Quran for a few minutes a day, I tell them, that's a shame. And I feel pity on you. I feel sorry for you. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows you to love Him and love His kalam the way you love your TV show. I pray that day comes. Because you're in a very bad state right now. And I understand that my speech and my tone may be aggressive, but this is what's required right now. We have to wake up. Spend time with the Quran every day, even if it's a few moments. If you can't read it, listen to it. If you can't listen to it, read it in your own language and figure out a way to connect with the Quran. If you build a relationship with the Quran from a young age, all through your life, those around you will see you and they will be inspired. The challenges you're facing that you're trying to figure out, you will find advice for your problems through the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one better to counsel you, guide you, teach you than Allah Azza wa Jalla Himself. Create purpose in your life. Find meaning in your life. Find depth in your life. Only Allah knows when that last breath comes out. And we pray to Allah that when that last breath does come out, It comes out at a time that we've done something in our life so we can speak to Allah with a smile on our face. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also happy with us. May Allah azza wa jalla grant us all tawfiq. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad. الحمد لله رب العالمين إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كلما ذكره الذاكرون وكلما غفل عن ذكره الغافلون ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما يا رب العالمين ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا برحمتك شر ما قضيت فإنك تقضي بالحق ولا يقضى عليك إنه لا يذل من واليت ولا يعز من عاديت تبارك ربنا وتعاليت فلك الحمد على ما قضيت ولك الشكر على ما أنعمت به وأوليت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك وصلى الله على النبي الأمي سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين أقم الصلاة